Welcome to Daily Dose Radio, a 5-minute devotional podcast studying the Psalms verse by verse. Broadcast from the ever-beautiful Sharonville, Ohio, on the sunny side of Cincinnati. Hey, welcome back to Daily Dose Radio. This is your home for organic Bible study. And this week, we're real organic because we're talking about Psalm 102, a prayer of the afflicted when he is overwhelmed. At least that's the way this psalm is introduced to us in the superscript. And he pours out his sighing before the Lord. It's a beautiful introduction and so appropriate. Yesterday we got through verse 5. Today we're going to look at verse 6, 7, and 8. I'm like a pelican of the wilderness. I'm like an owl of the desert. I watch and am as a sparrow alone upon the housetop. Mine enemies reproach me all the day, and they that are mad against me are sworn against me. So that's 6, 7, and 8. Again, his complaint continues. His desire for the Lord to come and hear his prayer, not to hide his face. You probably already got this idea from me. That first statement there in verse 2, I think, is the topical sentence for the entire psalm. Don't hide your face from me in the day when I am in trouble. Because trouble has apparently come to the psalmist, but hasn't it also come to us? I just really can't get away from that first phrase in verse 2. And here we're seeing more of his trouble in 6, 7, and 8. And notice the comparisons between the wilderness animals and himself. The pelican, the owl, the sparrow. And notice that sparrow, it says, I watch, and am as a sparrow alone on the housetop. You remember what Jesus told the disciples, what he told Peter. And when they are in the garden there, he said, watch and pray, lest ye enter into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. The psalmist here says, I watch. So he's watching something. What's he watching? He's watching his own weakness, his own inability, his own powerlessness. He's watching and he's seeing it almost if it's out of body. He's looking at himself in his condition as a sparrow alone on the housetop. There's nobody else around. He sees it all. He looks down on the activities of men all around him, and he sees the same thing. Weakness. They're alone. They're separated from one another. They're in the wilderness. They're in desert places. Maybe not, physically, but spiritually. There is this sense that they're so alone. I don't know if you've ever felt that way. You've been in a crowded room and yet felt so separated from everyone else. Well, that's the idea here, is that, he's looking down from the housetop at the people around. And he's separated from them, but yet they too are separated from one another. That's really the horrible thing about our condition, is that our sinfulness and our corruption keeps us from each other. Only in Christ do we find true fellowship with other men and women. Only in Christ do we find true connection with other people who are like-minded. And then he says there in verse 8, mine enemies reproach me all the day. We've really not seen the enemy for a while now, have we? The enemy was back in the first and second book of the Psalter, but now we come here to Psalm 102, and suddenly we have the enemy back again. And we prayed about the enemy, and we talked about the enemy, and we looked at the enemy and how the enemy reacts and treats us. Well, here we have the enemy once again. He's reproaching me all day long. We've seen that before with the enemy. But then notice it says, or the psalmist says here, they that are mad against me are sworn against me. They're just not mad. They've taken an oath. So this enemy is truly has designs against the psalmist. And he says, here, this is my problem. I'm separated from them, and yet they're mad at me and have taken an oath against me. Really almost shades of messianic prophecy here, isn't it? The Pharisees, Sadducees, the religious leaders of Jesus' day were mad and sworn against him as well. Well, we'll pick up there tomorrow, so I hope you'll join me for 9, 10, and 11 tomorrow on Daily Dose Radio. Thanks for listening to Daily Dose Radio. I'm David Smith. The music today has been performed by the Bluegrass Experiment. Thanks again for listening. I'll see you next time on Daily Dose Radio.